Good morning, everyone. So before we start, let's first have a prayer. Adrian, can you please lead us in prayer, please? In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Okay. Thank you very much, Adrian. So again, a pleasant morning to everyone. So how's your day so far? Good. That's nice to hear. Can you please pick up the little pieces of trash before you take your seat? Thank you. Okay, class secretary, do we have any absences for today? Oh, that's nice to hear. It looks like everyone here is present for today's discussion. Before we actually start, let's first have a recap of what we have last time. Angelica, what do you remember from the last discussion? Obligations. Right. So, Elaine, can you please give me a general definition of what obligations are? Okay. It looks like everyone here is still on the same page and we are ready to take on our new discussion for today. So our discussion for today starts with this little activity that I've prepared for you, which is entitled Guess the Mystery Word. Sounds fun, right? So in this activity, we have here this 9-letter mystery word. And in this mystery word, each letter consists of the subwords that you can guess through these hints that I'm going to give you. So for illustration, for an example, Brian, can you give me one number from 1 to 9? Box number 1? Okay. Number 1, okay. Okay, so we have here these jumbled letters. So can someone unscramble them for me and give me the correct term? Yes, Angelica. Covenant. Okay. Covenant. Okay. And that gives us the first letter of our mystery word, which is letter C. Okay, good. So we are on the right track. I guess we still have 8 more boxes. So we can't have any guesses yet. But can someone give me another letter? Yes, Neil. Okay, so we have number 4. Number 4. Okay, here. Okay, so we have here this little image. So can someone guess what this image represents? Okay, Joyce? Treaty. That's right. Treaty. Treaty. Okay, and that gives us our 4th letter, which is letter T. Of course, it's letter T. Okay, I guess we can still guess what the mystery word is. So let's have another box. Yes, May. Okay, number 6. Number 6 is over here. Okay, in number 6, we have this. You just fill it up. So Mark, do you have any guesses? Agreement. Agreement. And that is correct. Agreement. Oh, sorry. And that gives us our 6th letter, which is letter A. Okay, so we have C, T, and A. Do you have any guesses on our main mystery word? None? Okay, then let's continue. Angel, another number, please. Number 3. Okay, number 3. Oh, this is interesting. Okay, number 3, this is a Wickerable version. Okay, Lian, what is this? Negotiation. Okay, negotiation. Negotiation. Okay, and that gives us the 3rd letter. Oh, okay, Nick, do you have any guesses on the main word? Okay, the main word. Oh, okay, contracts. Actually, you are very much correct. Contracts. Let's open this. Contracts. That is our main word, and that will also be our focus for today's discussion. Contracts, its general provisions, and essential requisites. Thank you, everyone. Good job. You guessed the mystery word in our lesson for today. Okay. Okay. So now that we have established what our discussion for today will be, I know we all heard what contracts is, right? Can someone give me their idea of what a contract is? Yes, Angelica May. Okay, that's a nice, good definition to start with. You want to add, Kael? Okay, nice. So, it looks like we have a good, decent starting definition for what a contract is. But now let's actually define it properly based on our book, okay? So, contracts. So, contracts, according to our Article 1305, it is a meeting of minds between two persons whereby one binds himself with respect to the other to give something or to render some service. So, actually, your classmates are correct. It is a legal agreement between two parties. So, different contracts have different conditions. It could be to give money, to give property, to render some service, or to refrain someone from doing something. So, what I want you to note in this definition is that it happens between two persons. Of course, it can happen between 3, 4, or 5 people, but it can never happen between one person only, because that will only means that it is a commitment or decision rather than a contract. So, is everything clear with this definition? Okay, now let's move on to differentiating what a contract is and obligations. Yes, we have already tackled what obligations are last time. Now, Diane, do you have any idea on their differences? That's a good idea. Actually, wait. Okay. So, obligation. So, contracts is only one of the several sources of obligations. Meanwhile, obligations, it exists even though we don't sign or agree on any sort of contract. So, for example, of our obligations is our obligation as Filipino citizens to pay our taxes. That is enforced on our law. It is part of our obligations, and we don't sign any contract for that. So, is everything clear about obligations and contracts? Nice. Okay, now we can move on to differentiating contracts and agreements. From the term themselves, do you have any guess on their differences? Les, Maria. Okay. Actually, your example is very comprehensive, by the way. Your example is what we call a social or a moral agreement. And yes, you are correct for saying that agreement is far broader than contracts. Because all contracts are agreements, but not all agreements are contracts. That is true, because contracts, these are the things that are legalized by the law. But for agreements, we can have a simple agreements similar to her example. We can have an agreement even though it's just a verbal. It doesn't need any law enforcement. So, is everything clear with agreements and contracts? Do we have any questions? None so far? Okay, good. Then we can move on to the general provisions and essential requisites, which entails these requirements. Requirements, which are the things that your a valid contract needs, and these limitations. Okay, limitations in which your contract should not violate. So let's first have the requirements. So according to Article 1318, a valid contract, there will be no valid contract without this following. So we should have consent, object, and cause of obligation. So let's define each. Okay. So for consent, simply put, this is the agreement of all individuals involved in terms of the object, terms, conditions that are stipulated in the contract. So, Danielle, do you have anything to add for the class? Good. That's right. Consent is very important because after all, a contract is an agreement. If someone in the parties do not agree with one of the conditions, then that contract will be considered as invalid. That's correct. Thank you very much, Danielle. So, the next requirement for a valid contract is the object. The object is the subject matter for the contract. Or simply put, this is the thing or the object that you're trying to give or the service that you're trying to render. Then next Lastly, we have the cause of obligation, or simply put, this is the purpose or the reason why are you entering this contract. Why did you sign this contract? So those are the 3 requirements for a valid and a legal contract. So let's have this example. So for example, we have a contract of sale. So in this sale, Mr. X sells his car for 150,000 pesos to Mr. Y. So there are 2 perspectives here. So for the perspective of Mr. X, the object that he's trying to give is, yes, his car. And for the reason too, yes, you're quite close to sell his car, but more so, he wants to obtain the 150,000 pesos. For Mr. Y, in his perspective, the object that he's trying to give is, yes, the money, the 150,000 pesos. For the reason too, that's right, to obtain Mr. X's car. So those are the 3 essential requirements or the basic requirements for a valid contract. Again, what are those 3? Yes, consent, object, and the cause. So is everything clear about the requirements of the contract? Okay, you don't have any questions. Now let's move on to the limitations. So for the limitations, according to Article 1306, the contract must not be contrary to the law, the morals, good customs, public order, and public policy. And we'll go on them one by one. Okay, so we first have the law. Simply put, the law, these are the obligatory rules of conduct that we should follow because these are enforced by a legitimate authority or the government per se. So a good example of a contract that violates the law is, for example, a contract between a drug dealer and a drug user. Of course, right from the start, that is considered as invalid because the use of illegal drugs is considered as a crime based on our law. So, can someone from the class give me an example of a contract that violates the law? Yes, Estelle? Okay, that's a very good example because in your example, yes, we are prohibited with the violence and blackmail that is prohibited by our law. Thank you, Estelle. Now let's move on to the morals. So morals, these simply are the rules of what is good and what is right, and those things evolve in our community or society as time goes by. So a good example here is the cliche trope in which, for example, the mother-in-law pays or made her daughter-in-law sign a contract wherein she will be given this sum of money to break up with his boyfriend or his son. That is a contract that violates the morals because even though the law doesn't say anything about it, that it is wrong or whatnot, it is usually something that is frowned upon because why do you even want to separate 2 people loving each other? So do we have any example of a contract that violates morals? Okay, Joyce. Okay, good. In your example, the violated morals are the morality of good or academic integrity and honesty. And that is a very good example for that limitation. Let's move on to the good customs. Good customs, simply put, these are the practices and habits that are existing and followed in our society. So a good example here, for us Filipinos, it is part of our good customs to financially sustain or give financial support to our family even though we are living far away from them. So for example, a contract that breaks that kind of good custom. For example, you are not allowed to give them money so that you can pay off your debts. That's one of the conditions of the contract. Then that could be considered as invalid as it violates our good customs. Now, can I have some example from this limitation? Yes, Kate Ann? Okay, good. So in your example, it violates the conservativeness or the romantic practices in our country. That's a very good example. Thank you very much, Kate Ann. Now let's move on to the public order. So in public order, this refers to the public safety and the public will of the community. So a good example here is, for example, it is a contract of lease in which the landlord has a ability or has the right to kick out their tenants whenever they fail to pay their rents on time. So that can be considered as some sort of violence and a threat to public order, which makes it an invalid contract. Now, can I hear someone from the class to give me an example for a contract that violates public order? Okay, Lichelle? That's a good example because fireworks, especially when used in nearby the residential area, it can be very, very dangerous. That's a very good example. Thank you very much. Now, lastly, we have the public policy. So in public policy, these are the considerations that are moved for the common benefit of the many. So in here, a good example is, for example, we have Mr. X who stole Mr. Y's car. Mr. Y found out, and then Mr. Y proposed a contract that he will not turn Mr. X to the police by giving him this sum of money, for example, 200,000 pesos. That contract can be considered as illegal or invalid because it violates public policy. Because what's good for the community is for Mr. X to be put into prison because he is a thief. And that thief can do that sort of thing to another person again inside the community. And that sort of contract violates public policy. So, can I hear someone from the class an example of a contract that violates the public policy? Yes, Mark Jonas? Okay. In your example, of course, what is the threat to the public policy is the promulgation of questionable medicine in the public, and that can be very dangerous. So those are the 5 limitations of a contract. So again, what are the 3 requirements for a contract? Yes, the consent, object and cause, and the limitation. Limitation to the law, moral, good custom, public order, public policy. Okay, so those are the general provisions and essential requisites for a contract. Now, for this, to wrap our discussion, now, why do you think, as accounting students, why do you think this is very important for you to learn these contracts, these provisions and requisites? Yes, Estelle? That's a good insight. Do you want to add something, Elaine? Okay. So, yes, it's very important for you because contracts is something that you will encounter in your future career. And it's best for you to know all of these requisites and provisions so that you can maneuver your way out of it. So, good job, everyone. That will be all for our discussion. Now, let's have this, group activity I have for you. So, in this activity, we are going to group you into 3 groups. So David, can you please start the count of 1 to 3? Okay, now everyone has a group. So group 1, can you please sit there? Group 2 and group 3 there. Okay, quick and quiet. Okay, now that we are settled, representatives from one of each group, can you please pick one on these papers? Okay, thank you. Okay, so on these papers, that will be your assigned topic for this activity. So what are our activity? So in our activity, all you have to do is to create a situation or create your own contract. And what is stipulated in your papers are your assigned topic, whether it is a valid contract or invalid contract. So that is your main activity. So your performance should be 1 minute minimum to 3 minutes maximum. So we have here to guide you. We have here the rubrics. Okay, so in these rubrics, of course, we have these different components, but what we need to remember is to have an exceptional. What we have to aim is the exceptional performance. So for exceptional performance, The presented information indicates a clear understanding of your assigned topic. All members cooperated to create a very informative performance with utmost confidence and appropriate use of body language. So another thing to remember, please make sure that the other groups don't see what your paper or the contents of your paper, so that we can have a little guessing game at the end of our performances. Okay, so is everything clear with the instructions? Do you have any questions? None so far? Okay, just come to me if there's any more concerns. So now I'm going to give you 5 minutes to work on and brainstorm for your ideas. Okay, then I'll be back. Okay, time's up, everyone. So please settle down. Take your seat. Okay, so group 1, please show us your prepared presentation. Okay. Okay, thank you very much, group 1, for that very good performance. Okay, group 2 and group 3, what do you think? Is that a valid contract or an invalid contract? A valid one. Okay, group 1, can I have your? Okay. And yes, it's a valid contract. Okay, you can now take your seat, group 1. Thank you very much. Group 2, please proceed to the front to present. Okay, thank you very much, group 2, for your performance. Group 1, group 3, what do you think? What do you think is their contract? A valid one. Okay, group 2, can I have your paper? And it is a valid one. Yes, thank you very much, group 2. Thank you very much. Group 3, last but not the least, you can now take the stage. Okay, thank you very much, group 3. Now, group 1, group 2, what do you think? An invalid one. Okay, an invalid one. And it is, that's right, and it is an invalid contract. Thank you very much, group 3. You can now take your seat. Okay, it looks like everyone has a clear grasp on what is a valid contract and what is an invalid contract. Thank you very much, guys. So here are your scores for your activity. Have someone or have a representative in your group to list down your names and of course your corresponding score, so that we can have a clean record of everything. Okay, so for group 1, you have 17 points. Group 2, you have 18 points. And group 3, you have 18 points. And that's all for our group activity. Now, to end up our discussion, our lesson for today, we have this little assessment. It will be very easy for you guys, trust me. Okay, so for this activity, all you have to do is to explain the validity of the following situation. And you can do that by stating the requirements or stating what limitations are violated in these situations. So you can put your answer in a one whole sheet of yellow pad paper. You don't have to copy all of this. Your answers should only be 3 sentences to 5 sentences maximum. So is everything clear with those directions? Okay, if everything's clear, then you can now start answering our activity. Okay, it looks like time's up. Okay, so please pass your papers to the front. Thank you. Okay, I'm gonna check those later. So that will be all. That will be the last activity for today. We have so many activities, so many things to learn. So is everything clear about our lesson for today? Do we have any clarifications or questions? None so far? Okay, good. Then I think I'm going to end the class for today. Goodbye everyone, God bless, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!